Okay, we'll get started. We wanted to start by introducing ourselves so you know who you're listening to and why this may be helpful to you. Again, the topic is Bitcoin for Good, orange pilling NGOs and charities. So, my name is Oshawa Hawthorne. A little bit about me. I live in Portland, Oregon with my wife and 8 kids. I grew up in Hawaii in a pretty diverse community. I've been a social entrepreneur for 20 years, experienced starting and leading faith-based organizations, churches, nonprofits in the US. I studied global leadership, which includes organizational leadership alongside cultural anthropology. I'm a Bitcoiner class of 2020. I started an organization that's an innovation lab that tries to solve problems for human flourishing both locally, where we live in Portland, Oregon. If you on Twitter or watch the news, you know we have some challenges in that quaint little town. And we try to do work globally as well and are exploring Bitcoin as a technology for human flourishing. And we do some consulting for organizations and how to better use Bitcoin for their organizations. I'll let Samuel introduce himself.
Also, welcome from my side. Thank you for your interest. I don't know if anyone heard me just a couple of minutes ago on the main stage talking about the nation-state Bitcoin adoption. So it's a pleasure for me to also be able to talk about this aspect, which has to do with NGOs, with charities. And I was born in 1986 in Leeds in the United Kingdom. And perhaps something that really had a big influence on my childhood was growing up in Mongolia just after it became a democratic country, post-communist environment, living there during my childhood, age 4 to 16. I then came back with my family my parents, they moved back with me. I was 16 years old. When we moved back to Switzerland, I did my studies at the University of Bern in political sciences and was then elected to the Parliament of Canton Bern in the year 2017. It's difficult to say which Bitcoin class or year of is appropriate for me because I started studying the financial system in 2015 and learned about Bitcoin in 2016, but never really had my breakthrough until 2020 when I became very active also in the Bitcoin community then. And so I believe I'm the first pro-Bitcoin politician in Europe, perhaps, at least in Switzerland. So I spoke up quite early. I was really convinced about Bitcoin in 2020, and when I'm convinced about something, I start speaking about it. So, which I did as a politician, and so I've been very active on that front. And now, more recently, I started to get in contact with different NGOs and charities to help them actually to understand Bitcoin. And I'll be talking more about that later, so looking forward to that.
Awesome. So let's get started. So Bitcoiners are going to be some of the most powerful capital allocators in the world. So if Bitcoin continues to demonetize other global assets, then the people in this room, the people in this conference, have a responsibility to bear. We will have capital to allocate. And the question that we want us to ask is, because that comes with responsibility. And the question is, what kind of world will we help shape for our grandchildren with that capital? Now, Bitcoiners are not like the crypto bros, right? We're not just here for the Lambos. We're here for the revolution. And we genuinely want to see more freedom and flourishing come into the world. And now we've seen this again and again. Even if you show up for the Lambos, Bitcoin and the Bitcoin community has a way of changing you and changing people's thinking and even their ethics. I don't know if you've observed this. I have. I see things like consumerism turning into low time preference living and long-term thinking. You're going to pick, you want the Bugatti or you want the family? You want the legacy, right? So you have YOLO, hopelessness. You only live once. Let's just burn it all and spend it on our lifestyle. Or, and this grows over time, into hope for a family and leaving a legacy. We've seen secular relativism turn into a conviction that there is such thing as objective truth. Because as the cypherpunks say, code is law. And if you want to benefit from the network effects of Bitcoin, you need to submit to its objective consensus rules. So relativistic worldviews clash and get wrecked when they come into contact with Bitcoin. We also see socialistic statism, or whatever the term in your country is for the nanny state, that is often replaced by a love for freedom and taking personal responsibility, as well as a distrust for elite institutions. And this final one may feel controversial to you, but we've seen it again and again. Agnosticism being replaced with what I would call a proof of work theism, right? As people question secular talking points and begin to seek deeper meaning in their lives. Now, I say this, proof of work theism, because whenever someone says, hey, I found God through Bitcoin, and they tweet that out, immediately someone says, what? Don't trust, verify. Yeah, absolutely. But the type of people that take the long way around to return to God through Bitcoin have done a lot of hard thinking. And they're not coming to God because, well, I don't know, the church told me, or my parents said this, or no, they've done the proof of work and they've come back around. Like I just saw a Nostr post, what do you call it on Nostr? I don't know, American HODL, just saying, hey, absolutely, like I'm coming back to God because these are the people, these are the good people that I want to spend time with. I want this for my children. And he's going back to church. And it's like, okay, this is American HODL, like Mr. kind of Bitcoin frat boy, crazy intellectual OG. And he's finding God. And so we just hear that story again and again. And so because of that, we think we're here and we're all kind of on that journey somewhere along the way in these different ways that Bitcoin affects our ethics and our thinking and our way of living. And our assumption is that you want to then, you have an organization or a cause that you care about, and you want to figure out how you can help that cause. And absolutely, Bitcoin can help it. And so that's our job today, is just give some lessons that we've learned along the way. So here's the outline. We want to talk about understanding the challenges to Bitcoin adoption for nonprofits and charities. We want to talk about strategies to help a nonprofit adopt Bitcoin. And then finally, Samuel will go into some case studies that he's worked through. So that's where we're going. And then we'll have time for hopefully extended Q&A at the end. So first, understanding the challenges for Bitcoin adoption. As the saying goes, those who are well have no need of a physician. And the reality is some NGOs are just too close to the money printer. They get government funding, and their government grants become the thing that directs their mission, because sometimes, or maybe often, right, where the money comes from starts wagging the dog and shaping what you end up doing for your mission. And so sometimes even the business of trying to do the mission becomes more important than solving the problem, right? Because if you solve the problem, what happens? You go out of business. You might have to find another job, get a real job in the business world. So there's these mixed incentives of, does a nonprofit actually want to solve the problem it's trying to solve? And so if you got government funding, if you're close to the money printer, if you don't really want to solve the problem, then you know what? You don't have a felt need for Bitcoin. And in fact, adopting Bitcoin would introduce more risks than reward for groups like this, right? The risk of displeasing the very groups that Bitcoin was designed to replace. If this is the case for your organization or the organization that you want to orange pill, okay, sorry, probably find a different organization to work on. It is the reality. And I don't want us to I want us to take an honest look at nonprofit structures and not assume they're always good or assume they're always bad, right? There's ways that we can work with them. So that's the first disclaimer. You got to start with the right orgs. Second, nonprofit leadership often plays not to lose rather than playing to win, right? They don't want to risk regulatory issues. They don't want to risk offending donors or powerful stakeholders. And honestly, they would rather suffer from monetary debasement by doing nothing than take a risk and have a bad bet or investment go against them. Why? Because around the boardroom, no one's getting punished for sitting on their hands and, inflation's high, so we lost our money and our project is now like 30% more expensive. We have to go back and raise money. You know what? They don't, they're not going to get fired for that, right? But if you go take a risk and allocate capital to Bitcoin and it has a bear market, well, all of a sudden your job's on the line or your funding's on the line. So just inherently structures, nonprofits are less open to risks. And that's this final issue. Organizational bureaucracy can make getting past the FUD difficult. Truth is, Bitcoin still has a marketing issue. It's still viewed as highly risky and outside of the mainstream. Most nonprofits are conservative, right? They have charters that restrict them from engaging in risk-taking and picking investments. Most organizations have a policy that if you donate a non-cash asset to them, they have to liquidate it right away. If they hold investments, they have an investment policy statement. They have an outsourced investment officer. They have an investment committee, and they have to approve all these things within their charter. And getting through all that bureaucracy, which, right, there's protections, there's stewardship, there's important kind of purposes for these things, so don't hear me bashing that. But the reality is you have to walk through all those things to get a board of directors to say, oh, we should try Bitcoin. So that's just the organizational friction that you need to know about. Or if you're in a nonprofit, maybe you're all too familiar with. Now, here's the hope, and here we solve the Rubik's Cube. Nonprofits become open to Bitcoin when they begin to feel their need for it, right? And often their options have to be totally exhausted. But here's the good news, at least for us in this room, it's starting to happen. We absolutely are experiencing it. For larger orgs that had USAID funding, well, that's mostly gone. Monetary debasement, if you're a smaller organization, everyday funders and donors, right, they're feeling the pinch of monetary debasement. And they're far away from the money printer. So if people don't have extra money to donate, well, the organizations are even downstream from them, then they're losing funding. So there is more openness to it. There's a lot more financial currency controls around cross-border payments and sending money in different parts of the world. So things are getting more difficult. And here's just a little anecdotal story from 2021. My friend Nate here and I were at a large nonprofit Christian gathering in the U.S. of a room of about 1,000 charity and NGO executives and leaders. And Eric Hersman, who is the founder of Gridless, he was one of the keynote speakers. And this is before he started Gridless, but we knew he was a Bitcoiner. And so we connect with him beforehand and we say, okay, Eric, we're here in this big gathering of charity leaders. We want to find the Bitcoiners here. We know they got to be here. So we say, hey, would you, after your session, he's talking about innovation and tech and all that, and we say, hey, would you mention from the stage that if anyone wants to talk about Bitcoin, come down front and he'll talk to them. And so we're like, surely there'll be at least a handful of Bitcoiners in this room, right? This is 2021. And so he mentions it from the stage, he ends his talk, and we go meet him down front, and we're like, okay, here it is. We're gonna find them all. Crickets, right? There was one woman who came down and she needed help with her Coinbase account. That's it. And we're like, sorry, call the support number. They won't answer you, but it's okay. And so we ended up actually just brainstorming with Eric for a couple hours at that event. But then 2 years later, at that same event, we won a innovation grant to study Bitcoin and teach Bitcoin to Christian charity workers around the globe. And we did an event in El Salvador and then Kenya, and we're going to be in India next week. And we got funding for this grant, and then it was announced from the stage. And as we talked to people, that this is in 2023, we talked to CFOs, executive leaders of these orgs, and we had probably a dozen solid conversations of people saying, we're trying to figure out this issue of getting funds across borders. We're trying to figure out fundraising. And there was openness. So absolutely, things are changing. Now, let's talk about specific strategies of how we can help with Bitcoin adoption. So the first one that we've found is this idea of start with a pull approach rather than a push approach. So don't focus on legacy organizations that don't feel their need and are not open to innovation. Truth be told, the CFO is often the guy that has the trump card and controls things like this in an organization. And you're honestly not going to convince a boomer CFO that he needs to allocate like organizational resources to Bitcoin. Honestly, you got to wait for him to retire, probably. Instead, find the orgs that are already open to innovative solutions or which have acute problems that Bitcoin can solve. Shoot for easy wins and then share these success stories. We've been doing this for about 4 years, and we're making a lot of progress and finding success. So here are the use cases. You want to give them use cases that matter to them, but you don't want to overpromise, okay? Sometimes Bitcoiners, you get into the hopium, and you're like, it'll change everything. And like, no, okay, be honest. It's hard work. There's no easy solutions, okay? So we're gonna just walk through a few of these use cases. So first is this idea of more effective cross-border payments, especially in hard-to-fund regions. I won't go into detail because Samuel will talk a lot about this. But you gotta recognize that the last mile conversion into fiat is always possible because Bitcoin is a global market, but it's often not easy. And so you have to walk through these NGOs with finding those fiat off-ramps. Second, financial services for the unbanked. This is at the Hope House in El Salvador with Bitcoin Beach. And there's some amazing things happening globally, right? But, and I've talked to Mike Peterson about this, you don't like kickstart a circular economy because you got your local coffee shop to accept Bitcoin. Like, it's not that easy. You have to have trust and history in the community, and it actually helps to have a lot of funding to kind of start the circular economy and get it going. Okay, so it's not easy, but you can talk to Mike. It has there's some amazing second and third order effects that happen in these communities as they begin to learn about and adopt Bitcoin. You have protection from savings debasement in many parts of the world, right? The currency is debased, exchange rates are manipulated, many people do not have easy access to saving technology, and Bitcoin can provide this. But here's the thing, it has to go hand in hand with education. Many people, especially in the developing world, live paycheck to paycheck. They don't just automatically start saving because you get them a Bitcoin wallet. It's not that easy, right? You need to do education in personal financial management, in technology, and honestly, the volatility can be a problem, right? If someone lives paycheck to paycheck and has no financial margin, like the volatility may not work for them. So you need to create incentives for savings, and you need to help people wisely navigate that the volatility. Okay, a couple more. We have access to a new donor community. Nonprofits are always, right? They want to find new donors. And there are wealthy Bitcoiners out there. Additionally, there are tax advantages for donors, right? To give their Bitcoin as Bitcoin rather than converting it to fiat first and paying their taxes. In fact, if you're a potential Bitcoin donor, there's some great strategies around gifting your low cost basis Bitcoin, getting the tax write-off, and then replacing it with high tax basis Bitcoin, so you can actually step up your cost basis through charitable giving. But here's the thing. Again, don't overpromise this. Bitcoiners don't give up their Bitcoin easily, right? We hodl it. And so orgs need to know that Bitcoiners, right, they tend to be ideological. They tend to distrust institutions. And a nonprofit has to be willing to go to where the donors are at. Examples of this might include being willing to hold Bitcoin for future spending or using it for Bitcoin grants in regions suffering from hyperinflation. Also, something else is because Bitcoin wallets are public, you can actually create more accountability and transparency with your donors. If you say, hey, here's our Bitcoin wallet, and you can give into it, and then you can actually audit our spending. There's a lot of potential there. It just takes work, and it takes organizations like this is like the Charity Water created their Bitcoin Water Trust. They held their Bitcoin for 4 years. I don't know if you saw it. They just changed the Water Trust website to a Donate Crypto website. So I don't know what's up with that. Someone who knows them, they should go talk to them about that. But there you go, donor community. And then finally, turbocharge an endowment fund. So Bitcoin can totally transform the economics of an endowment. So just a little anecdotal story. So the nonprofit Brilliance Labs that I lead, we have a small endowment. We started 4 years ago. We had to do the investment policy statement. We had to hire a wealth manager, but we kind of stacked the deck. We had our investment committee with Bitcoiners on it. We hired a wealth manager that was going to let us hold Bitcoin. We started with a 3% hodl, where we said we're going to buy this Bitcoin and we're going to hold it and not spend it. And then we did a 3% rebalance because the wealth manager's like, yeah, you got to rebalance. What happens if it grows too big? Well, doesn't feel like a problem to me, but the wealth manager says you got to rebalance. So we're like, okay, we'll rebalance 3% of it. Now, what happened was that was the top of the last bull market. So then it crashed, right? And then we're like, call the wealth manager. Hey, I need to rebalance. Meaning I need to buy a bunch more. So we did that. We're actually able to double our holdings over the bear market. Then we met again, kind of version 2.0. We said, hey, we want to increase this. So we increased the rebalance holding to 10%. Our hodl portion was already at like 12%. So we were in about 22% Bitcoin allocation. And then we met with some more folks. We did some more kind of dreaming of what it would look like to fully have a nonprofit Bitcoin treasury strategy. And so we haven't announced this previously, but we basically converted our entire treasury, our entire endowment to Bitcoin, plus a 3-year operating fund. So the money from the endowment that's needed to operate our budget for programs and staffing is held in short-term treasuries and some like dividend low volatility stocks. So if there's a bear market, we can last for 3 years before needing to sell any Bitcoin. So that's a strategy, and it puts us at about a 60-40 portfolio, 60% Bitcoin, 40% kind of low risk short-term bonds. So that's a strategy that we've taken, and we have outperformed. So our Bitcoin has 10x the performance of our standard wealth manager. Budgeting season as a nonprofit, when you have a Bitcoin treasury, is like going to the candy store, okay? Because you have funds to spend. So now, final here, strategies is start with insiders who are already Bitcoiners. This is a big point for us. We've found that where we've made progress with a nonprofit and have not just kind of hit closed doors is there's an insider. And as the biblical saying goes, a prophet is not welcome in his hometown. Often there's a Bitcoiner maybe on the board or on staff, and he's like, guys, Bitcoin. And they're like, you're the crazy guy. We're not listening to you. So you can be, if you're on the outside, you can come in and help that insider. Groups like ours, Brilliance Labs, there's lots of other good kind of Bitcoin consulting groups that will help you think through how to use Bitcoin. So find the insiders, work with the insiders, or if you are an insider, work with an outsider and bring them in as like the professionals that will help your org adopt Bitcoin. And if you're with an org, you're trying to help them and there's no Bitcoiners, honestly, it's easier to orange pill an individual in leadership and get them on board and then take the long view, and then they'll help their organization. And then finally, use a Bitcoin donation as an incentive for the nonprofit to learn about Bitcoin, right? Nonprofits love talking to donors. So if you have a cause or an organization that you already support, consider using a Bitcoin donation to start the conversation. So our organization did a micro grant program where we did matching funds. So we said to donors, hey, if you have a church or ministry that you want to donate to and you want to give them Bitcoin, we will match that donation up to a certain amount, and we'll do the legwork of the education and help get them on board with Bitcoin. And so, but then the catch was we would only match the funds once they held the Bitcoin for 9 months. And so it creates this incentive. And there's a really neat loophole that at least exists in US kind of nonprofit law. You got to check your own country. But nonprofits have two potentially conflicting gift policies. The first policy says, if you receive a non-cash donation, you need to convert it immediately to cash, right? So that's in their bylaws. It's policy. They have to do it. They have another policy that says, if someone gives a donation and they make a request as a designated gift, they will seek to honor that request. Now here's the little hack. You as the Bitcoiner can say, hey, I have this donation. I did this with my church. I gave my entire year's tithe. And I said, I want to give my year's offering to the church, and I have Bitcoin that I want to donate. And so now they say, oh, okay. Even though our policy says we need to convert it to cash, we also want to honor this request. So my request was, I want you to take it as Bitcoin, and I don't want you to sell it, like for years. And, well, they can choose which policy to follow, or maybe they just need to make an adjustment to their bylaws. But we've found that as an inroad to help donors Orange Pill, the organizations that they support. So that's my portion of the this master class. If you want to find out more, brilliancelabs.org/Bitcoin. Get in touch. We'd love to talk with you about Orange Pilling your favorite organization.
Let's give Ashwa an applause. That was really great energy. Very inspiring, and it's an honor for me to continue on from here with some some practical case examples. So I'm not like full-time working on orange pilling NGOs. It's also, you're not doing it full-time, but you're doing it more than I. What I do is I orange pill everyone around me, which includes the parliament, where I'm a member of parliament. It includes my political party. And when you mentioned, you got to find the insider because he's like the crazy guy, well, that's me within my party. So in the board of directors, it did not come to a strategic Bitcoin reserve yet, but I'm very confident that we're getting there. So I guess I'm going to acquire some outside help so that I'm not the only crazy guy. Then I just orange pill everyone else around me in my circle of friends. And at some point last year or maybe it was this year, I was at a concert. And I just met this guy. I know him briefly from church. And I knew that he was leading an NGO. And then I also found out, I was like, hey, can I pay the drinks with Bitcoin? And then there was this guy who sold the drinks, and he said, well, officially no, but I have a wallet, so you can pay me the drink in Bitcoin, and then I'll just care that the drink is paid. And this opened up the conversation, and I realized, hey, this director of this NGO is a Bitcoiner himself, who was with me getting a drink. And then I told him, hey, have you thought about using Bitcoin in your NGO? And he was like, I've thought about it, but there have been many practical issues. So I just encouraged him to look at it. And so I'll briefly talk to you about why do NGOs need Bitcoin from some practical real-world examples. And so one problem I see a lot, and I'm not a big specialist for NGOs, so this is just from my everyday orange pilling taking people by the hand experience. So one problem that I guess many people are aware of is the inefficiencies in the legacy system, which are much more in some countries, less in others, depending on which rails you use in the traditional financial system. It's sort of you'll be doing okay or it's really bad. So maybe you're familiar with the studies by the International Monetary Fund in which they analyze how much fees need to be paid to transfer $200 from one country to another. And this is like the worst case scenario. To send $200, you might have to pay up to half of it in fees. This is worst case. Then there are, of course, ways you can do it with much lower fees. But if there is a black market for the currency in the destination country, you have a problem. Because if you go through the official rails, they'll give you the official rate. But if the black market rate is something totally different, then you don't really get a good deal. So the high fees, they are in most countries, it's manageable. It's not too bad. But in black market situations, that can be a real issue. Then a second problem is that some groups of people, some religious groups, some political, ethnic groups, they get heavily persecuted just for being what they are. So, and if they, I mean, this is from Egypt. I don't know if you're familiar with about 20 Christians that got their throats cut by Islamists some years ago. And of course, if there's this kind of persecution, depending on the government also, there can be also, of course, a lot of financial repression. And this is an overview now. So Christianity is the most persecuted religion in the world. I don't know if you knew that, but it's by far the most persecuted one. And Open Doors, which is an NGO which has been researching the amount of persecution, they publish these kind of lists every year, which show where persecution is the strongest. And usually it's like North Korea on the top, like it's been there for years. And then some countries sort of take their turns in being some of the worst countries for persecution. But I recently met the director of Open Doors in Switzerland, and I just felt I should talk to him about Bitcoin. So I went up to him, I introduced myself, and I asked him, what 3 countries is it most difficult for you to get funds into? And he told me North Korea, Somalia, and Sudan. And I said, okay, North Korea, perhaps an issue for itself. I don't know anyone there. I don't know any Bitcoiner there, unfortunately. I don't even know someone with an X account there. So, but I thought, yeah, Sudan. I know there's Sudan Hodl. So I went on a phone call with Sudan Hodl. I wrote him on X. And it turns out he's very, very well connected in getting funds into Sudan with Bitcoin. He has a contact network of lots of traders he can use. So I'm ready. So this organization has actually not approached me yet, but they know if ever they need Bitcoin, they know whom to contact. But in fact, I've been able to work with the NGO called Operation Rescue. It's a small charity based in Switzerland, actually quite close where I live. And they've been around for 25 years. They have different projects they support in the destination countries of Ethiopia, Brazil, Mozambique, and India. And they try to really help and improve the lives of children in these destination countries. So let's look at the case study of Mozambique. Mozambique has a high degree of financial repression. So when I talk to Bitcoiners from Mozambique, they tell me it's really difficult to buy Bitcoin. So many people cannot own a credit card or debit card. Many are unbanked. And so access to Bitcoin is really difficult for normal people. It's a bit easier if you're like on the side of the government. It's generally easier in most countries, but in countries where there's a lot of financial repression, if you're not on the side of the government, it's usually quite tough. So I looked up the exchange rate and found out, well, there's a black market premium of 30%. You see there that there was a lot of inflation between 2010 or from 2015 to 2018 or so. Really bad stuff. And since then, they seem to have solved the inflation problem because for the past 3 years, it's like very, very stable. Problem is, this is just the official rate and it's not reality. So there's a black market rate, and then I looked at how Operation Rescue has been doing it. So far, they actually had 3 methods of sending funds to Mozambique, and I'm just showing you one, which is the easiest way they use, but they also had different ways, which I cannot give in detail, so I'm not giving you all the information here, just because this will also, as far as I know, this video will be uploaded at some point, and so some information needs to be confidential. So they use a local bank in Switzerland. This local bank uses a major correspondent bank in Switzerland, probably UBS, I don't know that, but this is what ChatGPT told me. And they use a major international correspondent bank based in Africa probably, which then works together with a local bank in Mozambique. And from there, the funds get to person D, who is the project leader on the ground. And then I showed them how they could replace that flow of funds by intersecting Bitcoin. So it is still dependent on fiat, of course, because we need to go from fiat into Bitcoin and then from Bitcoin into fiat again if there's no circular economy yet, which is not the case in most countries and in most places. But by using Bitcoin in between, maybe we could say instead of the international correspondent banks, we sort of substituted them with Bitcoin for the international payment rail. It was much easier to get the funds to actually the project leader. And so the organization was onboarded by a friend of mine who has this Bitcoin exchange called dfx.swiss. And then I actually just went on X and to see, is there a Bitcoiner whom I can trust on the ground in Mozambique? And I found Bitcoin Famba. And it turns out, so I had a phone call with him, and it turns out he's a great guy doing lots of important Bitcoin education work in Mozambique. And so he's been able to provide the liquidity to do the exchange from Bitcoin into Mozambique Medicals, which is the local shitcoin. And he's been very helpful. So Operation Rescue, Switzerland pays 10.5% less for this Bitcoin fiat solution than they did with what they were used to. And in the legacy system, they were only able to send small tranches, which partly is still the case also with Bitcoin. But the advantage for Bitcoin Famba is they get easy access to Bitcoin in a country with heavy financial repression. So, sorry, that was a bit quick. And the full transaction cycle takes only minutes instead of days, as was the case before. So actually, as you can see here, the fiat rail usually took 2 days, sometimes 4 days, and sometimes the money was returned after 6 weeks because it didn't go through. So this is how it works in the legacy financial system, and you know how it works with Bitcoin. You do a Lightning transaction, takes a second, and even then using mobile money, it also took a few seconds, so it's almost instant. Let's go to the second example, getting Bitcoin to India. There's less financial repression in India in general, but also Christian faith minorities partially severely persecuted, which requires then a complicated workaround because this is also partly the persecution also comes from the government. So, if this is the case, then it's more difficult to actually use the legacy system to receive funds. So they use a complicated workaround. which also, well, it wasn't that bad in concerning the duration of the transaction, but I cannot outline here the details of their workaround because of security reasons. Anyway, it's instead of Bitcoin Famba in India, we use a Christian missionary, a peer-to-peer Bitcoin trader, as a contact person in India on the ground. People tell me that he's probably the guy with most peer-to-peer Bitcoin trading in the whole of India, right, Ash? So he knows him. I got to know him through him. So here they also save about 10%. And this is donor money. So this is, I mean, saving 10% in donor money in banking fees. I mean, this is big. So this, I mean, these are some very nice examples. It might not be that obvious in some countries, but still it's worth to look at. And depending on the country, it's great. It's really a great solution. And Alex, our peer-to-peer Bitcoin trader, he can sell Bitcoin on the ground with a premium of 2 to 6%, depending on the local market conditions. So it's a win-win situation. So I also got a contact in Malawi. That's a different organization I'm working with that's based in Malawi. There we have an extreme discrepancy between the official rate and the black market rate, which is 139% higher, and also terrible seasons of inflation behind. So I did a proof of concept so far. So far, they've been just traveling with $100 bills in their pocket or in their luggage to get these $100 bills to Malawi and then to sell them on the black market. Of course, this is easier with Bitcoin, so he knows the option is available, and so it's just a matter of him doing some more research or just saying, hey, let's establish this contact better, and let's use this opportunity. So this is a second NGO that I'm orange pilling at the moment. Let's get to the conclusion because time has progressed. So these are opportunities I see. We get much better exchange rates, especially in countries where there's persecution of that group which you want to support, or if there is a black market rate, then it's easier. Also, the access is easier to persecuted people, and the payments are faster. What could challenges be? I think the main challenge is finding a trusted third party in the destination country. And well, it didn't turn out to be such a big challenge because I just went on X and I looked for Bitcoiner. And you, as a seasoned Bitcoiner, you know the quality characteristics you look for, right? You sort of know if they're Bitcoin only, it's a very good signal. If they've read the Bitcoin Standard, for example, it's good signal. And then you start with smaller amounts, and if they prove themselves to be faithful and trustworthy, then you can entrust them with bigger amounts. So our guy in Mozambique, he was even like saying to us, hey, this is great that you want to work together with me, but I want to give you 10% more than what you did previously because of the black market. So I feel I would be ripping you off if I didn't offer you a better rate because I can sell it for so much more. So we didn't even know about it. So the guy on the ground, the Bitcoiner, he was so honest to tell us, hey, I should be giving you more for what you're sending me. So then you really found a great guy. But the challenge could be circumventing state controls of fiat off-ramps, which is possibly an illegal activity. So if the NGO decide, well, we just need to get the funds there and it's very difficult, then sometimes if the government is too authoritarian, you just need to have your workaround just for the sake of the common good, of the better. And an issue we will need to look at is scalability. These are small NGOs I've been working now with so far. Would it work the same way with a bigger NGO? Might be a bit more difficult. So these are things to be looked at. Some next level ideas. Of course, creating and fostering a Bitcoin circular economy like Mike Peterson did in El Salvador. Hi, Mike. Of course, this is like the non plus ultra. And if it is possible to do that, by all means, because then you don't need to worry about the fiat off-ramps anymore. Then also, if you have a humanitarian project going on, combine it with Bitcoin education, because it's one of the best things to teach people how to get financially independent, and it will help them a lot just getting financially educated, which most people in most countries just aren't. And an issue which also, or an idea which Ashwa also mentioned, is the strategic Bitcoin reserve for the NGO. So if you have a fund and you know, well, it's there for savings and for the rainy day, then he showed a great example of what you can do with that money to steward it wisely. And so these are some inputs from our side. Thank you very much for your interest. We still have about 10 minutes for questions. So, and if you want to encourage my friend, the director of Operation Rescue, and show them the power of Bitcoin, even additionally, then do feel free to send him some sats. So I am sure he would appreciate that. And I think it's just a great example of showing how easy it is, how also for him to and his organization to accept donations. So I'm sure that's a great idea. Thank you for your interest. You can facilitate the questions. Okay. Any comments or questions? Yes.
Hi. First, thank you so much. I will try to use my English, but it's not so good. Sorry. Thank you so much for the presentation. I think it's very good example, but there is some critical situation that sometimes we have in humanitarian work. First, observation is it's true with the cut of USA government for to the NGO or big humanitarian organization. It's the reality that most of NGO or institution open to innovation way. To the welcome Bitcoin, welcome all the other method or innovation finance. No, to the, for example, in my case that I work for UN Refugees Agency, we have an innovative department that try to see everything. First. The second, it's the problem that we have is that we don't have possibility to invest our money because we needed to send it to the field any money that we did for rising. Most or less between 87% and 89% need to go to the field. The second, it's forbidden for us to invest. We cannot invest. So I think this kind of idea depends on the biggest is the organization. This is very important. Second, what is very important is to understand the needs of humanitarian work. In this moment, in this case, for example, in my case, 123 million of people has forces to flee. You need to be really quickly to help them. I think Bitcoin can help in this way, but you need to have Bitcoin for to do it. And this is it's a condition that we have in this moment, no? And the second, most of the people don't understand the humanitarian work in general because there is no difference between the coordination work, operational work, and what's up the reality of a project, you know. And in this case, we, for example, with Cardano Foundation, we already did the blockchain for goods. We tried to open our mentality with blockchain. Work good, but doesn't work so much in this moment. We received some donation. But I think the biggest problem of any organization is how this innovative finance, Bitcoin, blockchain, everything, can help us to have fund, because you save the life when you have a fund. And without fund, it's really, really difficult to work in the field in big situation. Sorry, this is in my opinion, but we are absolutely open
Yeah.
to study any possibility.
Yeah. I think you made a lot of really good points, and yes, there are many challenges. One thing that you mentioned that I think is important. So crisis funding. This happened when Russia invaded Ukraine, and you heard stories about how do we get funds quickly into Ukraine, or how do people flee with their money. So Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and Tether were used to immediately get funds where it needed to go, or get funds out. We have another large NGO that I've been working with that has assets in a country that's in danger of being invaded by China. And they say, what do we do? If, God forbid, this happens, how do we get our money out if they shut down the banks? And so I think one inroad could simply be Bitcoin ready. At least gain the organizational understanding so that if there is a crisis, either humanitarian work, you got to get funds in, or war tensions, you need to get money out. If you are prepared for it, you can do it when you need it. Thank you. Other questions? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I have a question. You have any experience for Cambodia? Bitcoin?
I don't personally, but
NGO?
yeah. Yeah, what Samuel shared is maybe your quick process of how you found the research that you needed about a country.
Yeah, so basically what I did was just to go on X and try to find a Bitcoiner there, or a Bitcoin education initiative, which I think by now there should be people in almost every country. And for me, I found it easiest to just search on X. But of course, I mean, within the Bitcoin community, I'm sure if you talk to a few people here at the conference, I guess you should be able to find contacts. I don't have any contacts to Cambodia right now, but perhaps someone is working. Maybe if you don't find someone in Cambodia, maybe you probably should find someone in Thailand, and then from there, usually they are well connected.
Hi, I'm really gutted I missed the beginning of this. I lead Bitcoin at Save the Children. We were the first INGO to accept a Bitcoin donation in 2013. And to this gentleman's point, I think it ultimately is always, when it comes to donations, donor-driven. It was in the response of Typhoon Haiyan that struck the Philippines that this donor goes, hey, I've got Bitcoin, I like Save the Children and what you're doing, I want to give it to you. We find a way to accept it. Fast forward, we raise about 12 plus million in crypto donations, just passively. We're a large organization, so that's still a small proportion, but it's enough to take note. Anyway, I'm going to be doing a talk today at 4:30 if anyone wants to hear more, and I'll be announcing a Bitcoin fund, which is super exciting. But I missed the beginning. Is there anything that we might be missing as a very large organization that prides itself in being pioneers, that is very much in the Bitcoin space? What's the next stage? Like, if we're here in 5 years' time, what will we be talking about? We'll be accepting Bitcoin, we'll be holding Bitcoin, we'll have it on balance sheets, but what's the next stage in your guys' opinion?
Well, first, I would love to come and talk to you and learn from your session and learn what you all have done. I think foundationally, Bitcoin is a savings technology. And so that's where it's revolutionary, the savings and the freedom. And so finding the ways, I think there's a lot of, like Save the Children, like HRF, Bitcoin Beach, like there are these very innovative organizations that are making progress. So yeah, building out the new models, treasury strategies. So yeah, let's talk more though.
I think we have time for one more question.
Yeah, thank you for explaining your Bitcoin all-in strategy, where your whole fund was converted into Bitcoin, and you had this sort of short-term money part. Did you also consider lending against your Bitcoin? So never sell your Bitcoin?
Yeah. So I guess potentially open to that, but then that would be accessing like debt and at least with our current model, we have the funds available to just allocate to different volatility level assets. But perhaps as the market matures and there's more more products available that would meet our needs, we'd definitely be open to it. Yeah.
Since this was a short question, because there was one more hand, let's give it a try.
Thank you very much. I think it's an important question. Any suggestions for orange pilling the local governments and even local level militaries that are working in these situations, in these places?
Yeah, I guess through the individuals. I mean, with local communities, depending on which country, the local mayor does have quite a lot of influence, and so if you can get to this person, like the mayor of Lugano, I mean, he was very influential in getting a Plan B going here, and it shows what can be done. Through the orange pulling the individuals, I guess that's. But you have anything to add, Ash?
No, that sounds great. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. And we are still around, so if you want to come up to us for questions, otherwise we'll see each other during the conference. Have a great day.